People who quit a job without another lined up for you. Mental health. How did it turn out? Quit my job at a call center without anything lined up. I used to cry in my car before a shift, used up all my sick days, and it worsened thoughts about end my life, so I got myself out of there when I couldn't take it anymore. I quietly stood up from my desk and quit on the spot. I had never walked out on a job before. It took me a month to find another job with just slightly less hours, so a little less money. But it was worth it, because I'm a lot better mentally and physically, and I like the job. Sometimes you just got to do what you got to do. I'm a young professional now, and I'm finishing up an extension program to further my degree. Life's good at the moment. Story 2. Worked a call center job after 1 week of training and 2 days of actual work. During the training, you're shown how it's not possible to order a free trial of these expensive products without seeing the clearly marked, in multiple locations, terms, and conditions. But then I got to the floor, and these people were old people who were offered a free gift when they bought something on Amazon. They never went to a website and ordered a free trial. They were lied to and then charged $80 3 weeks later. It was a scam built to prey on old people. I had a panic attack on the way to work and quit when I arrived. Damn that noise. I was a new mom and we were really hurting for money. That was my first job after having my son, and we had to beg money off relatives to stay afloat another month until I found a new job, which was much better. I was able to be hired as a substitute for a school district, and a month later, get rehired by the same district as a teacher's aide. Now I'm about to finish my certification and become a teacher.
Story 3.
Left my job of 15 years with nothing lined up because it was gaining me nothing anymore aside from being overused for my job knowledge with no reward. Took a month off, found another job that pays me more per hour than my last after I got promoted to supervisor after putting in 5 months. Couldn't be happier. Story 4. I quit after an argument with my boss because I didn't agree with how he did things. Within 2 months, I started my own company doing what he did, but the way I thought it should be done. I'm still running that business, and he shut us down 3 years ago. Story 5. Yes, I had a job that I loved. Had coworkers I loved. I'm still friends with some. Ownership changed. My job that was from 9 to 5 somehow turned into on call all the time. My workload was always heavy, got added onto. I would say no to additional workload. It somehow still ended up on my plate. Somewhere around a year after the ownership change, I found myself Googling heart attack and mental breakdown symptoms because I knew something wasn't right. I finally walked into work one day and handed in my notice. No job lined up. Didn't think it through. I wrote up my notice 5 minutes before I left for work that day. Due to bills, I ended up taking a job I was overqualified for and made crap for pay. But after a few months, I got hired to where I am now. I do the same type of job as the one I walked away from. Did it work out for me? I'd like to say yes, but only time will tell. I will say both myself and my family are much happier right now, and I haven't wondered if I'm having a mental breakdown or possible heart attack since I left. That's a win. Story 6. I quit my job of a year and a half out of anger and spite for my manager, and because of my quickly declining mental health. While it helped at first, the anxiety of not having a steady source of income took a much larger toll on me than anticipated, and I really didn't get to focus on my recovery, therapy for my mental health until I had secured a new job to quell my anxieties. Story 7. Yes, I quit a very high-paying job, in fact. I was a software engineer. It was great at first. I liked my coworkers, and the company was one of those startups that had a ping pong table and cold brew coffee on tap and all that jazz. It was my first job out of college, and I was dazzled by the cool community feel and all the amenities. However, they had no system in place to train me. I was basically expected to just read the code base and just instantly know exactly what to do. My team leader couldn't answer my questions, and I quickly started drowning in work. My once recreational substances use turned habitual. I was due substances in the bathroom to stay awake because I stayed until 9 p.m. trying to finish projects by the deadline. Once I finally started performing well, that only reinforced my terrible habits. I thought that if I stopped self-medicating, I would fall behind and they would fire me. I cried every day. I was also the only female employee on the software team, and I got these paranoid thoughts in my head that my male coworkers didn't really like me. In retrospect, I'm sure my alienation was totally my fault and a result of my anxiety. I didn't even like the programming anymore. When I was in college, I interned with people who were using software to help charities, uncover bogus statistics, and generally lift up communities. My job was nothing like that. The people there acted like they were curing cancer, but the majority of what we did boiled down to helping huge companies build training platforms that were more hip and cool. So I quit, not just that job, but the whole field. I had started abusing harder substances as well, and I knew I was going to end up hitting myself. I went to rehab, and then I went back to school and got my master's degree in education with a focus in mathematics. I'm a private tutor and a substitute teacher now. I hope to get my PhD one day, but for now, I am happy helping young people realize their dreams. I set my own schedule so that I'm able to pursue my passions. I'm 2 years clean from substances, and I have the most wonderful friends and a perfect kitty. I am so happy I quit my job. Even though people thought I was insane for leaving the tech field, and I'm sure my mom's friends talk crap about me behind her back, I'm glad I didn't pay them any mind. Story 8. Yeah, I had been overworked and underpaid and underappreciated at a small resort for months. Tempers flared, and I was given an ultimatum. I chose to walk out the door in the middle of the busy season. The next night, I went to a bar and saw another resort owner and friend saying goodbye to his only employee. He typically had 3. I walked up after, and the conversation went like this. Me, that sucks. Do you have anything else lined up? Him. Nope, I've got nothing. Me. Do you need somebody to help? Him. Do you need a job? Me. Yep, as of yesterday. Him. Show up tomorrow whenever you want, and you've got the job. The rest of the summer, I ran his cafe, shop. I had 7 years of cooking and 2 years retail management experience, and he ran the outfitter. The first day after showing me around the kitchen, he had to go attend to something. When he came back, I had 20 people already eating, and I was chatting them up and cleaning. He looked around and goes, "Well, you're getting a raise?" The rest of the summer was great. Story 9. I quit a job working as a logistics manager for a hospital. It was the worst job I ever had. The union reps would constantly mess with you, taunting you and try to get you fired. I was constantly on edge and would basically snap over everything. I developed a huge persecution complex where everyone was out to get me. They would purposely feed you false information that would go against required practices. For example, one of the reps gave me a fake forecast for products we needed for the upcoming week, so I was to arrange the delivery, ordering, and storing for the products. When I ordered it all and had it delivered, I found out we needed like 1/10 of the products that was ordered, so I had to explain to the finance department why we exceeded our weekly budget. Basically, my choices were be fired or quit because of the colossal duck-up. I was 21 at the time. I'm now in school to get my bachelor's of accounting, so I guess it turned out pretty good because I could leave that horrible industry. Story 10. Yes. 10 years ago, I was in a bad relationship and struggling with chronic anxiety and depression. My long, stressful commute and job I hated just added to my stress. One day I got a migraine and went home early while my boss was at lunch. The next day, she requested a meeting, and before the meeting was to take place, I sent her an email with my resignation. My anxiety took over, and I just couldn't face whatever it was she was planning to say to me. It turned out badly. My dad was extremely angry and said some pretty cruel crap. My relationship with him has never been the same since and probably never will be. My boyfriend dumped me a couple of months later and kicked me out of our house. I had to move back in with my parents at age 30 and wasn't able to find another job for 11 months. When I finally did start working again, I had a string of more horrible jobs that I hated. My career still hasn't recovered and probably never will. Without some stroke of dumb luck, I'll probably be working underpaid, somewhat crap jobs until I die. My mental health has improved a lot though, so I got that going for me, which is nice. Story 11. I worked for an insurance company for 6 years. Was fun at first then, went through a divorce and all 5 years in and stopped caring. So I quit, cashed out my 401k and drove from Indiana down to Key West and got ducking trashed for a week. Then traveled to various states and just hung out and did what the duck ever. Lasted 3 months and then went back to Indiana and then went to work for a different insurance company. I don't regret it. It was healing and uplifting and met some cool people along the way. Story 12. I worked in an auto body shop as an estimator for 9 damn months until I had a mental breakdown and quit without notice by stuffing a letter in the mail slot with my keys. You were required by policy to be in there at 7:30, but you were expected to be there by 6:30 because they were overwhelmed. I left at 7 p.m. regularly. I was so overworked and so overbooked, I had to literally choose what I was going to get yelled at for the next day. The boss was a narcissist who liked gaslighting people while presenting himself as a kind, fair person. He was never wrong, and you were to always blindly accept his opinions or beliefs as such. You could never accuse him of being wrong. You could not organize yourself and your workload in any way unless he approved it. I will never forget the time he sent me out with the company card to get bagels, and he convinced the entire group to not tell me what flavors of cream cheese to get. And then they got mad and blamed me when I didn't magically know what flavors they wanted. I told them to duck off. I was so mad, I wanted to come back in with the donuts and dump them on the carpet in front of everybody. The technicians had absolutely zero desire to communicate anything to you. There was no desire to participate in the morning meetings to get everybody up to speed on each car. So when the customer inevitably calls in, you can't answer their questions because you do not have the information, nor the time or desire to waste your time in the shop dragging the answer out. Techs will give you a supplement and will refuse to explain their supplements to you, so it takes even longer to get supplements approved because the insurance company is either confused or thinks you are doing needless repairs. The front staff were toxic. The receptionists did billing and would offload absolutely anything on you at any chance they could get. The assistant managers were both massive S, and one of them was a bigoted. homophobic mouth breather who absolutely loved mocking anybody who did not have straight, heteronormative mannerisms or dress. If you looked gay, he would go back to his desk and mock you. It was fun reporting them to HR, but perhaps even more fun saying, "Oh, snap," in front of him, because he became necessarily mad about it. The other estimators would do anything to make themselves look better, which meant if they ducked up, they would find a way to blame somebody else. If you needed to have a technical consultation or get some knowledge from anyone, they would shoo you away. They were too busy while mocking you for being stupid. I was called lazy and entitled for taking a 30-minute break per state law. We were too busy for that. If a pretty woman walked in, the front staff would talk amongst each other and talk about how much they wanted to duck her and discuss what hot things they would do to her. Then they would fight over who was going to work with her. It was pathetic. The shop literally couldn't care less about the quality of the work being done, only that it was done quickly because metrics were tied to bonuses. So if the repairs were done like crap, I was blamed for not managing it, even though I had literally zero time to manage cars in the shop. When customers did call us out, I would bring it to the manager, who would then blame me and then try to weasel out of it. I was damn glad I quit when I did. I remember sitting outside on a grassy knoll in my apartment complex, enjoying the rustling of leaves as of sunlight touched my forehead with a healing warmth. I had 27 unfinished estimates that needed to be written because they refused to take me off to get them done. Damn them. I filed a report with HR and never made any further contact. I had another job within a month, perhaps by sheer luck, perhaps by sheer goodness. The thing is, even if times are good, you need to always be saving some money, at least for 3 months of rent and expenses. I can pay off my entire lease if I had to tomorrow and have room for utilities, which gives me a lot of security in knowing I'm not stuck at a job. Thankfully, my current position is at a university, and those places tend to have lowered work requirements and formalized procedures for everything. So your boss can't just fire you on a whim because your damn shirt was purple, or because you used Trello to manage projects or something. Also, I'm not dealing with idiots. Story 13, Radio Shack. I worked there for about 3 months. They paid minimum wage plus commission, and the only ways to earn commissions was pushing useless extended warranties or cell phones. And we had to push batteries, like AAA and AAA batteries. We were expected to get so many of these things every so many customers. Batteries were like 1 out of every 10 customers. I got a headache every time I walked in for a shift, knowing I had to push this crap on people. The major turning point for me was when my manager, who was just an arrogant little man who was built like Danny DeVito with John C. Reilly's face, butted into a transaction of mine. The customer was a special needs man who was buying an UpConvert DVD player. It didn't feel right to push the extras on this man, considering the circumstances. My boss saw this and forcibly took over the transaction, and talked this poor man into buying extra cables and disc cleaner and warranties for everything he could. What should have been a roughly $50 purchase for this man ended costing him close to $100 when all was said and done. The cherry on top was when the man left. Manager printed a copy of his receipt, shoved up in my face, and proceeded to brag about it. I quit a few weeks later. Luckily, I was able to go back to my old job for a while I looked for a permanent job. I ended up going back to school about a year or so later. Story 14. Didn't have a job lined up, but knew I would be okay for a while. I pretty much drained my savings, partly because of my mental health. My best advice is also a really bad advice, but I would suggest finding ways to deal with it while you work. Am I getting better? Sure, in a way. But I've learned that at least for me, this will probably be a lifelong battle, and most won't have the capital to sustain that. We're no longer a country of prosperity for many hardworking Americans, just trying to survive. Story 15. I was a mailman for about a year. Thought I'd give it a shot since my dad did it for almost 40, and I figured it'd help me understand him better. Best money I'd ever made. Starting pay was something like 16 and some change an hour, especially with odd. But I was miserable, just damn miserable. My commute was 45 minutes in clear traffic, but if I didn't finish my crap in time and I hit rush hour, the commute could be up to 2 hours. I'd leave when it was still dark, get home when it was just about dark again, have just enough time to eat an absolute crap load of food. Walking 10 miles a day is sort of a double-edged blade, then go to bed and do it again, and again, and again. Sundays included, thanks, Amazon. When I got sunburn and frostbite on the same day, my thick head finally realized the money wasn't worth it. My wallet was full, but I was damn bankrupt when it came to emotional or creative energy. Money isn't worth it if you're too miserable to spend it. Story 16. I once had a factory job after finishing high school, but it was meant to just be small handwork since I am a small woman. Aside from the constant harassment, mostly from outside contractors, the guys I actually worked with were generally pretty nice. It was becoming more and more stressful as management would fire people and never replace them, and had unrealistic expectations. My department initially had 4 people, my manager working in it, and then ended up as just me. They would also have me helping other departments that were behind. I was constantly getting called up on things that weren't my fault. If I was behind on stock, it was because I hadn't made enough, even though they'd had me helping another department for several days. Eventually, one of the employees there started getting creepy. I had never complained about people before, but this guy cornering me in a shed and just staring at me was really starting to weird me out. They wouldn't fire him, though, as he was mentally handicapped and they didn't want to get hit for discrimination. Thing is, they never really fired people anyway. They would just tell them they didn't have work ATM and to take a week or two off and then never call them back. Well, along with Creepy Guy. There was another issue with an off-site electrician who had come in to do work, followed me to my office and pretended to work by the window and scurry off when he saw my manager coming. I wasn't aware he wasn't meant to be in there till the next day. So rather than have to deal with all this, the company decided it was just easier to get rid of the one woman working there and pulled the no work right now thing. Except a few days later, they called me back. When I got to my office, it was a mess. Clearly someone had been working in there, but not doing a very good job at it based on all the trashed pieces. Shortly after, one of the guys I got along with walked in and was surprised to see me, telling me he was told I was let go, which I had not been told, even though he was glad that he thought it would mean he didn't have to do my job anymore. I was the only one who knew how. I was so pissed and fed up I walked to management and quit on the spot. They were quite rude to me until 5 minutes after I left, and they were blowing up my phone, begging me to come back and we can work it out once they realized they were screwed with nobody else trained to do my job. I didn't go back though. Took the $15,000 I'd saved from the constant overtime and went overseas for a few months, where I ended up getting engaged. I developed a lot of physical and mental health problems at that job, which I gradually recovered from. When I got back, I was told by a friend that they'd had to hire 5 new people to fill the job I'd left, and soon after that, the married couple that were the upper management got fired. Story 17. I did it due to long commute and mental health, would recommend against it because it sets a bad precedent for the future. Also, unemployment depression is a lot worse than employment depression because no routine, nowhere to be. Embarrassed to meet new people out of fear, they will ask about your situation. Story 18. I worked at a daycare. I woke physically ill, puking before work daily. One day I went on lunch break, had a panic attack on the way in. A coworker calmed me down and I never went back. They asked me to come in to discuss why I quit. I told them unless I'm legally required, I'm never coming back again. I did try to report them 3 times, and the inspector came and walked out with coffee and a nothing to see here check. I got another job shortly after, so it worked out. The chain of daycares is under new management now. Story 19. I did. I was an elementary school teacher. It was a terrible fit for me, but I gave it my best shot for 3.5 years. I had no support. The kids were terrible to me. I never had enough time to do anything and was exhausted. I would go home crying every night, cry all day Sunday. I was loaded up on all sorts of mental health medication. Just a very bleak time. The day I quit, it was right before Christmas vacation, and I was teaching kindergarten. I absolutely could not control the class, and they were hanging off the ceiling. Every day was like this. Every day was a fight with them. I just sat in the rocking chair trying to figure out what I was going to do, and I just gave up. I asked one of the students to go get the aide from next door and asked her to watch the class for a second. I went to the principal's office, dropped my keys on her desk, and told her I wasn't coming back. Told her she could keep all my stuff. Find a sub. I'm out. Went back to the classroom, grabbed my purse and wedding picture off the desk and was out. We just bought a new house, so I should have been freaking out. However, the car ride home was the most liberating experience of my life. I wasn't even worried. I called my husband to tell him what I had done, and to my surprise, he was very supportive. I think he was just glad it was all over. A few weeks later, the union tried to get me to rescind my resignation, but I absolutely wasn't having it. It took me 9 long months to find another job. I had to put my student loans in deferment and cash out my tiny teacher pension to survive. But I waited for the perfect opportunity, and I found it. The job I took was a perfect fit for me and was just what I needed at that time to rebuild my damaged confidence. That new career that changed my life for the better in so many ways. I'm fiercely loyal to that job and company because I truly believe that it saved my life. Walking out of there that day was the best thing I ever did. I have never, ever regretted it. No matter what, it's just a job. It's not worth any of what I put myself and my family through. Story 20. Yes, currently in such a situation. I was in a bad place mentally and jumped into a job that stressed me out way more than any job I've had before, but did it for the better pay and potential career future. Was very unhappy every day while at the job and was beginning to feel trapped in it. The thought of being in such an unhappy situation for the foreseeable future and feeling trapped there was like I was being backed into corner with no way out. I started having major anxiety. I couldn't sleep at all. My depression, which I've had most of my life, was at a peak. I was feeling to end life. One morning during a bad panic attack, my chest started hurting, so I went to the doctors. They took me to the ER fearing I might be having a heart attack. After a few hours of tests, I was thankfully cleared of that possibility, but I spoke with their behavioral specialist, and she recommended I needed a change of some sort. in my life if my stress and anxiety was starting to manifest physically this severe. They gave me a recommendation to get a week off work to basically do some soul searching. I chose my personal happiness over immediate financial security. I had some money saved up to coast on for a bit, so I left the job, and once I got on Medicaid, since I lost my insurance with the job, I sought out treatment for my mental health. Then I met with a psychiatrist to figure out what medications I might need to be on, set up regular meetings with a counselor, basically just finally decided to tackle these mental health issues I've always shrugged off or was too scared to seek help for. I can honestly say it's the best decision I've made in a long time. Yes, the uncertainty of income and when ill land a new job is a daily stress until my job hunting pays off. But in just the short time of actively taking care of my mental health, with professionals has been such a great gift. I feel like I have a way better foothold on my life and a better outlook. Even in the middle of a stressful bout of unemployment, I don't feel anywhere near as bad as when the stress, anxiety, and depression were left unchecked and were able to affect me so awfully. Story 21. Yes, I've had depressive episodes on and off throughout my life, and they started to have bigger consequences in adulthood. Out of college, I worked at a big software company making a lot of money. I struggled at first because my organization kept shuffling around and I lost all the relationships that made me feel safe. Then I stabilized and did incredible work that impressed tons of people. Then my anxiety problems spiraled out of control, and I declined for a year and a half. Eventually, I couldn't take it one more day, and I quit. I lasted about 3 years at that job. I was unemployed for a year, then got another job at a software company. This time I made even more money than before, but the pressure was higher, and in spite of all my hard work, I got fired after 12 months. It's been more than a year since then, and I'm just now trying to go back to work. I'm running out of money. I'm looking to go into contracting because it might be lower pressure and lower pay. I'm struggling mightily to confront this because work is damn terrifying to me. I've been putting in the work in psychoanalysis. I have ruthlessly examined every aspect of my inner life. There are dramatic changes in the way I view the world and myself. I believe that I have value and am ready to go back to work. I also believe that no one will want me, that everyone can see that I'm still broken, and that any smart employer will put 2 and 2 together. This part of me is the part that wants to go jump off a bridge. Experience tells me I will not do this, so the only way to go is forward. Story 22. Yep, was absolutely burned out from my previous job. Loved the people, but the workload and pressure to work overtime was just too much. Ended up worsening my depression and really made me doubt my abilities. I ended up resigning January this year, and it was for the best. While it was scary to not have another job lined up, I did enjoy all the free time I had. I read all the books I wanted to read, traveled a bit, and just basically did whatever I wanted on a particular day. It felt so nice to know that I had full control over my time. Around 3 months of being unemployed, I started searching for jobs and managed to find one. My current job is nicer and there's more work-life balance. If you're going to quit your job without a replacement lined up soon, I recommend you just rest a bit and do the things you want. Very freeing. Or, if you don't want to stay idle, learn a new skill or improve your current set. Story 23. I am a teacher. I was at a previous school for 12 years, and it got to the point I would cry at dinner because I was just miserable. I worked with a lunatic who I think was only a teacher, so she could be mean to kids. It slowly turned all the school against the subject, even though apparently they liked me. Bit liking my subject was not cool, so I got a teaching post at a new school, same subject. It was better, but I still felt like I simply couldn't do it anymore. Waking up feeling sick every day, feeling like I wanted to crash my car on the way to work just so I had an excuse not to go in. Luckily, my husband got a promotion and supported me handing in my notice. It helps that teachers in the UK need to give a prox. 12 weeks notice, so I had plenty of time to find something. 5 weeks and 4 interviews. After handing in my notice, I landed a job in a special ed school for kids with autism and anxiety. I will teach functional maths and English. It's an outdoor environment with animals, lots of trips, and focus on learning outside the classroom. I've managed to negotiate it so I can do 2 days a week there before I go full-time in September as a form of transition. I love it. It's also 7 minutes from my home, so makes childcare arrangements easier, and my transport costs will reduce by 90%. Handing in my notice was totally worth it. I was lucky to find my dream job, but I honestly think I would have found something, even if I had to stay in mainstream teaching. Story 24. Worked in the family construction business for about 14 years. Was running one of the main crews as a foreman. The owner was leaning heavy on me and putting stresses on me that weren't warranted with the position. Had money that I was saving for a down payment on a house. Quit after a blowout with the boss over something so trivial, it's mind-boggling thinking about it. Spent the next 3 months hanging out getting myself back together. Blew through all the saving for the most part, but in the end it all worked out. Got a better paying job in the same field. Pretty much zero stress. Couldn't be happier. Story 25. Yes, my first job out of college. I was a logistics broker, so it's a sales position. I was making $70,000 at 23 years old at my first job, basically, all from commission because the salary was crap. That being said, starting a book of business from ground zero is really hard work. In the industry of trucking, it never stops. Getting calls 3 a.m., 4 a.m., Christmas, all weekend. Where is my delivery? Can you find me a truck? Trying to keep on good terms with customers for duck-ups you have no control over. Not to mention every month starting back at $0 and never knowing how the market is going to change. I started drinking heavily at night and taking sleeping pills. Started finding a gray hair or two. It was bad. I was promoted to sales manager and eventually offered a general manager position, the only woman in the company to accomplish this. I was proud but knew I could no longer handle the stress. I quit and I never felt so much relief in my life. Looking back, I just shouldn't have taken it so seriously. Sorry your lampshades are going to be late. I don't care, but I cared about my customers. But no job is worth your mental and physical health. Take care of yourselves, ladies and gents. I'm now married with 2 beautiful daughters and I'm a stay-at-home mom, the best job in the world until they are in school. I thought I'd be in sales forever. I never imagined I'd be here and I'm so happy. Story 26. In September of last year, I left a job of 5 years without another one lined up. I had several months to find one, I just didn't try. In Nov, I accepted the first job offered to me, and I was more miserable than when I was unemployed and broke. It was my first MF9, 5-desk job, and it was mind-numbing. I was in a tiny office with 3 other people who never talked to me. As it was a manufacturing plant, and my office was right next to the line, it was loud and stinky. My manager was supposed to be training me, but she was inattentive for the most part. After I completed and submitted an end-of-quarter report, she said it was wrong and she was pretty sure she had accidentally skipped parts of my training. I felt completely invisible and worthless, so I quit, back to being unemployed and broke. But in March, I accepted a very different type of job at a nice hotel. I love my schedule. I enjoy my work and my coworkers and boss are friendly, hardworking, and really pleasant to be around. I make $3 an hour less than the crafty desk job, but I am infinitely happier and getting up for work is much easier. Story 27. My fiancée did this about 2 years ago. I was a little nervous, but I supported her. Her boss was a banana who actually liked to crush the spurts of those lower than him in the org chart. We live in a really expensive city, so I was a little cautious about it, but I saw that job was really bad for her. Somehow, she was able to land a job within 1 month. Not very easy to do here, so it worked out fine. She walked dogs and did random jobs for about 3 weeks after she quit. My story is a little different. My last day was on Monday of this week. I didn't necessarily quit with no options. I've done freelance work for about 5 years, in addition to working a full-time job. My job was unnecessarily stressful too, and it got to the point where I thought I could make just as much, if not more, money going off on my own. This week has been amazing for my mental health. I've landed a few contracts, and at least for the next few months, I'll be making more than I would have just doing my old job. I'm no expert here, but it worked out for us. Mental health is very important, and people should always prioritize that. Story 28. Oh yes, I had a good job at a college. I felt so lucky to get it, administration. But it turned out that all the employees, staff, and faculty were backstabbers who set you up for failure. I think it's just the way academia runs, but I didn't know that. I stuck it out for nearly 7 years and started having suicidal thoughts. Once I realized I was going a little crazy, I gave my notice and quit without a net. I never got over it though. I've had a lot of rough jobs, but that was the absolute worst. Story 29. I had to quit a job I had for 8 years because it got to a point where every night I just went home and cried. I was getting underpaid the whole time and working 12-hour days, 6 days a week for a while, and treated like crap while I was doing it. Why the heck would anyone stay in a job like that? If I hadn't been in that situation, I would probably ask that too. But it was like an abusive marriage. I was made to feel like less than dirt. I was made to feel like I was lucky to have that damn job, and I had rent to pay. Eventually, I couldn't take it anymore, and I gave my notice. I wound up working there for a few more months because I had no spine or self-respect left. When I finally got out, I had a breakdown and wound up in a psychiatric hospital twice. It took me 5 whole years to recover and find another job. I now work in a completely different field, in a crap-kicking entry-level job. I get paid properly and treated with basic human respect, and I will never work for a small business again as long as I damn live. Story 30. I decided to start my own business in pet care after quitting my job to take care of my dying father. I'm glad I did. Being my own boss was the best choice I have ever made. It was slow going at first and financially difficult, but it's going on 4 years. I have a steady, reliable network of other people in my profession who work with me and swap clients that need scheduling. For example, someone gets a request for overnight pet sitting, but already has a client scheduled. And it's a conflict, so clients are then sent to the next sitter available. That helps keep me out of the red. I also have a client list of regular pet owners that are mine only, about 200 or so. Actually, as an example, one of the pet sitters I work with lost a loved one yesterday and asked me to take over her clients for the weekend. She did the same for me after my car accident last year. We are independent contractors with insurance. Advertising, we buy ourselves. Nothing like WAG or other pet care apps. We are the face of our business and support each other. Without the community mentality, we would be struggling so much more. Story 31. Heck yes. Quit a soul-crushing job with no plan. Took 2 months to travel, came back and had a new job that pays twice as much, and I love within another 2 months. Story 32. As of today, it's been 2 weeks since I quit my full-time job with no other means of income lined up. I'm a young female who worked under a manipulative and abusive man of 2.5 my age. After being shown multiple times that sexual favors and constant emotional abuse were the required conditions to get a paycheck, I promptly bailed. He has by now found a replacement and someone to train them, I'm sure. But I aced an interview at a higher-paying job just yesterday, and have another interview set up with a different company on Monday. So I feel much happier and safer in being proud of my decision. Story 33. I did customer service for a US car company in the 98S. Back then, almost all car companies were making garbage products and treating customers even worse. 90% of my job was telling callers that the lemon they bought will be their problem once the warranty is expired, and too bad. You're on your third transmission in the first 2 years, and it's likely to fail again after the warranty expires. That kind of thing. I was one of the best in the office at it too. I was also under a lot of stress in my personal life. Combined with the monotony and bad vibes of that job, I was hit with a kind of depression. I just got up and walked out of the office one day and walked home, over 2 hours, on the verge of tears. The artistic career I was building on the side then took off, because I actually was available to focus on it. And I was quite successful for a few years, which then led me to a different career in a loosely related art form. Been making my living doing both ever since. Haven't had a real job since. Story 34. Yep, left a job I'd held for 3 years and moved towns. I've struggled to find more long-term employment in my new town, but I'm happier and far healthier. I went from spending nearly 50 hours a week at my desk to having plenty of time for myself to get outdoors. I love the sun, and I was just a really depressed, sad little mushroom at my old job, kept in the dark and fed on crap. It's been just over a year, I'm 20 kilograms lighter, have just found another casual job, and even though my employment isn't steady, I'm loving life. Story 35. It turned out great. I was working in retail. I generally loved my job until I had chronic depression and anxiety. While all this was happening, my parents broke up and my granddad was passing. I was getting verbally abused by my manager for not trying hard enough. I once came into work one day and I couldn't open the door because somehow my key snapped in half. Had to call the manager to open the door for me. She then went on to say, "That's not good enough, like it was my fault." Anyway, I decided I've had enough with this place talk to Har and went on sickness leave. During that time, I decided I did not want to see her ever again. A few months after I started working for my partner doing video editing and Photoshop, where I get to work from home. For the first time, I have a career path that I want to aim for, which is computer science. It was the best decision of my life. I should also mention I have recently got off all my medication and I feel so alive. Story 36. I worked as a child and youth worker in group home for physically aggressive youth for over 8 years. At the end of my career, I burned out hard, very close to a nervous breakdown, lots of anxiety about going to work. Having nightmares of working when I slept, one day I got in my car to go to work and found I physically couldn't move, not until I decided to call in. I called and quit without giving 2 weeks' notice. I couldn't bring myself to go back. I went to counseling for a bit, threw away all my work clothes, took a year off, and lived off A. There was a program called Second Careers that gave me funding to go back to school. I went to school for something I've always thought about during my previous career, dental assisting. I've been in the field for over 2 years and I love it. I'm very happy I left a job that was hitting me physically and emotionally and went to something I'm interested in and am very good at. Story 37. I had a very abusive boss. We were the only 2 employees and I spent between 12 and 20 hours a day with him. I already had an anxiety disorder, but 3 years with him made it so much worse. I was experiencing almost daily panic attacks. I couldn't eat or sleep. I even ended up in the hospital for 5 days. I talked to management and the conclusion was, if you can't work with him, put your notice in. I tried to push through, but the straw that broke the camel's back was when he started throwing crap, smashing coffee cups, throwing whatever was in his hands. He flipped the chair I'd been sitting in, a large armchair, not a small desk chair, because he was mad at me. I just got so scared. What would have happened if I was still in the room during his outburst? It's been a year and a half since I left. I made a career change, went back to school. I still have nightmares frequently and lasting trauma from some of the things that happened. Story 38. Yes, a few months ago, immediately after 2 things happened that destroyed my mind and body. I think if Jay had stayed at the job, I wouldn't have gotten through it. Now I work a more chill job part-time, went back to school, and already have a potential internship opportunity. So I'm happy. Story 39. Worked out really well in the end. Took me about 2 months to find another job, but luckily So can support like 90% of our expenses on just her wages. So it wasn't as hard on us as it could have been if I didn't have her to fall back on. I have a much better job now that I even somewhat enjoy and pays better too. Story 40. Yes. I had an abusive client. He'd constantly yell at me about how much he hates me and wants me to pass. Yes, he had cerebral palsy and numerous other things going on in his life which made home unhappy, and he dealt with it by hating on me. But yes, it made a massive impact on my mental health, and I stuck around for much longer than I should have. It was the right move, quitting. However, I failed to take the next steps towards employment, even when the money ran dry. Slipped into a deeper depression as I ignored the help around me and spent my days alone in my basement gaming room. A few months ago, I got a cooking job and things have been looking up, but I'm still working on things about myself that really got ugly during my time employed at the last job and the time, about a year, spent unemployed. Story 41. Yeah, I'd planned to leave for mental health reasons, but I left earlier than scheduled for too many industrial accidents reasons. I feel way better mentally, and the horrible things I've heard from ex-coworkers tell me I made the right decision, but I still haven't found a new job. So if you need a website made, hit me up. Story 42. Quit a low-paying job at a brewery, beginning of working in my dream field, without any sort of plan or anything lined up. Had just gone through a really rough breakup the day after I was hired at said brewery. Wanted to work things out with my ex. Found out her reasons for breaking up with me might not have been entirely honest, and that she went back to her ex-boyfriend. Mutual friend kept feeding me information about her getting back with her ex, found out within a week of breaking up and starting at new job that we sold out to another brewery, and I might not have a job after the summer. Quit the brewery without any sort of plan for mental health reasons. Just needed to be by myself and not a big idiot around big burly bearded brewers. Was jobless for a while. Things have finally worked out now. Story 43. My father quit his job because he was severely depressed since he was working nights and didn't get to see his 3 kids, and they refused to move his position. He ended up not being able to find a good job and the bank we were paying. For our house was being an idiot, and my mom got diagnosed with Ms. We ended up homeless for a year. Then we found our ground again, and my dad is still working a crappy job. But us kids have all made lives for ourselves allowing him. And my mom's so save enough for them to go around in an RV traveling the USA. It was a rough time, but I'm really glad he did it. I'd rather be homeless a bit than have a past dad. Story 44. I quit my job at a video game retailer that enforced horrible policies that set us up to upset our customers. No cashback no matter what, even on defective phones, regardless if there's another replacement credit only. The customers treat us like crap. We were robbed 4 times in the time I was there. The company was essentially breathing down our neck, watching us on the cameras at all times, even in the break room. Caught me borrowing a friend's PS3 in the break room and accused me of stealing it from the store. Last time we were robbed, my friend was stabbed in the face with a box cutter, and after reviewing the security footage, the director of operations said, "I don't see a weapon, and we really can't have employees hitting customers." I didn't give notice, I just never came back. Got a new job at Starbucks within a few days. Story 45. Yes, and it turned out to be the best thing I could have ever done for myself. Was working in a fruit shop run by people who are do as I say, not as I do, working from 5 a.m. till 8 p.m. My misso was pregnant at the time, and every day I would wake up just dreading going to work. One day, during my shift, I decided I had enough. Bought a pen from the shop across the road, took a piece of paper from the printer and wrote my 2 weeks notice. Was unemployed for about 1 or 2 months, saving got a bit burnt, and relationship was getting rocky. But in the end, found a job, then found an even better, more fulfilling job caring for people with disabilities. Never let a job keep you unhappy. Money does not equal happiness. Story 46. I worked at a nonprofit that had a completely toxic environment. It was okay when I started, just normal stress of working with people who have a ton of problems, and you have too few resources to really help, but you do your best. Then people started quitting, and they didn't replace them. Then they put a lady in charge who was a huge bully, and more people left. When I finally left, the staff was half the size of when I started, but had increased the amount of services we were providing. I literally would hide in closets from this lady to avoid being yelled at and berated. It felt great to leave, but I had nightmares about that place for months. I had been saving for months so I could take some time to find a new job, and found one no problem because nonprofits are usually understaffed. Story 47. I work in a fairly tight-knit community in healthcare, and everyone knows everyone else in the industry in our city, kind of thing. My former boss quit on 2 days' notice because she found out her doctor diagnosed her with a TIA, mild stroke, basically the worst possible kind of headache that lasted for 3 days straight. They determined it was because she was stressed at work. She was in her early 40s, so not close to retirement. No one I've talked to has heard from her about her in the last 3 years. She was a great boss. I remember those 3 days. She was quiet and stayed in her office a lot, but was still very nice and helpful. I hope she's okay. Story 48. Not mine, but my BF. He had a toxic work environment and quit his job abruptly. Said he was going to take a little time off to get his head back together before starting something new. Fine, that's okay. We're stable enough with my scholarship money from school for that to be okay. It's a year later, he still doesn't have a job. I haven't paid our rent in 2 months and we're getting kicked out by the end of the month. I've got $5 to my name and am slowly building up credit card debt. He's too picky about what job he wants and won't fill out applications on his own. If I could go back in time and tell him not to quit, or at least wait until he had another job lined up, I would in a heartbeat. Story 49. I see a lot of posts here about quitting call center jobs, and I can confirm they are absolutely awful. I had one I quit several months ago. Well, not quit, fired, and I couldn't have been happier. They had this thing going where if you voluntarily left within the first 3 months, your paycheck would be from minimum wage, as opposed to the actual pay grade listed on the site. So, after my week of training and 2 days of actual trying, I made things as difficult as possible for them. They fired me on Friday, but for some damn reason forgot to have me listed as such in their system, so I got paid for an extra week and a half. I should also mention I applied for inbound calls, and they tossed me an outbound. Story 50. Yeah, I did. I was working for an employer that was doing a lot of shady stuff and wanted me to do shady stuff too. I quit for personal reasons and filed for unemployment. They had me see a judge one-on-one to make sure I quit for a good reason. I told them everything that I had seen and been asked to do. Apparently, my previous employer said I was lying, to which I said that I have witnesses if that's required to back up my story. They gave me the highest weekly amount they could with my income. I was on that for a while, but eventually I landed the job I have now. It actually turned out great in the end, but my girlfriend at the time was not happy about that decision. Story 51. I quit my good house band gig, tired of the club and my bandmates who were always threatening to quit, so I did instead. Joke was on me. The next day I was sitting in a Perkins restaurant and some of the club customers were there and asked me over to their table. It was a retired officer and his youngest son. I ended up going out to their house to listen to music, drank brandy with them, and they took me out to dinner. We became great friends, met the whole family and their friends, and my life really opened up after the dreary rut I had been in. Honest, don't know how I got by. Out of work for 6 months, I think. Must have had savings. Story 52. One of my coworkers had her last day today after giving 1 week notice. I don't think she lasted even 3 months, but I completely understand why she left. She was a paralegal assigned to 2 different attorneys. The attorneys, both women, are difficult to work with as they are entitled, treat you as if you are beneath them, and are extremely confusing even though they think they're being perfectly clear. I felt really bad for her. I didn't get to know her very well, but I just had a good feeling around her. She was a bit quiet and kept to herself, and I'm sad to see her go. But I know that those 2 attorneys had to be taking a toll on her emotionally. I hope she finds a nicer job. Story 53. I quit my job because the boss was incredibly neurotic. She micromanaged me and would tell me to get off the desk phone when I was conducting interviews, knowing full well I'm conducting interviews. She took away and moved that phone to a different room, so I had to stand up and conduct all the interviews. When I quit, she threatened to kill me. I had to get a restraining order against her. Then she sent her brother after me. I had to get a second restraining order against him. Story 54. I was being harassed on a daily basis. Also, the owner was taking advantage of me and basically ripping me off. So I put my notice in. I was living with my mill at the time, paying about $900 per month to live there. When she found out, she totally flipped her crap, didn't even care about the circumstances of why I had quit. Told me I should have at least gotten another job lined up. She was so fed up with my actions that she kicked us out that night. First time was for getting into a weather-related car accident. Same week I had another job lined up that paid a lot better too. Haven't spoken to the woman since. Story 55. I quit my job by not going there anymore. It was taxing. I had low pay, software developer, DevOps, and software engineer LMAO, and they expected me to work 12 hours a day on many days without compensation. After quitting, I lost my apartment, am now in debt, and gained a much better mental health than I could have ever imagined. The debt is being paid off. I live in a nice apartment and got a job in customer support. Now that's really chill. It taught me a lot about social interaction. Now I focus on my own projects and try to start my own company. It was for the good, even if it meant lots of suffering in the beginning. Story 56. Best thing I ever did. Found something better, happier, with a huge pay raise. Someone told me if it compromises your happiness, it's not worth it. Truth. Story 57. I'm bipolar. So I frequently get so depressed I can get out of bed. I've walked out on multiple jobs on the spot. No notice, no nothing. But I attempted to walk out once on the same place I currently work. I actually think I've attempted to walk out multiple times. They didn't let me. The owner's wife was aware of my mental state and practices medicine relevant to my situation. Long story short, I never left. They consistently work with me, and I wish everyone could speak openly with their employers about their needs, mental or physical. Story 58. I was going to blast myself because I hated everything about it. I left. I felt better. I went broke. I felt worse. I got a small gig, was broke but could afford the bills. Almost blasted myself again due to poverty. Got another part-time job and kind of had it together and was poor, but okay. Applied myself and got a well-paying full-time job I enjoyed. Had a good time for 10 months. But then the existential crisis hit a few weeks ago and felt like blasting myself. But this time I could afford a trip to the doctor, and now I'm on antidepressants. I do enjoy my current job though, and the pay is good. Story 59. I'm a huge introvert, but funnily enough, my mental health plummets when I'm working 40 hours a week in an office setting. Both times I've had an office job, I ended up spontaneously quitting and working part-time in retail. I realize I'm extremely lucky to be able to do that, but it did wonders for my mental health. When you're on day in and out for 5 days a week and 8 hours a day, you get into a very dark place. Right now I've been working part-time and I haven't had any frequent episodes. Also got therapy as well, so I'm doing a lot better. I'm thankful that my husband's career allows me to do that. Story 60. I quit my retail job 2 months before turning 4 years working there. Best decision ever. Never looked back. I was so relieved. Spent almost 2 months unemployed. I was extremely depressed. As I went on a bunch of interviews with absolutely no success until I finally got one of my dream jobs working as an art consultant at an art gallery. I'm constantly going to exhibits, networking events, meeting artists, art collectors, like-minded people passionate about art, an absolute dream. Also, I just got to be the editor-in-chief for a fashion and arts local magazine, which first issue we're expecting to release at the beginning of 2020. Story 61. I worked at Target for 14 years. The last 4 years were very hard. I dreaded going to work, and I wasn't very fun to be around. In September of last year, I'd had enough and quit. I cashed out my 401k and took it easy for a while. My mood has improved greatly, and I'm genuinely excited about my future now. I know now that I don't have to suffer in situations that make me unhappy. You get one go-around in this game called life. You don't have to be miserable at a job you hate. Story 62. I did after 21 years. WW six-figure salary. Family-owned company turned highly dysfunctional when NextGen took over. It wasn't hard at all. I got an offer at a startup before my notice was up. That didn't work out. Then I had some health issues and didn't work for a year. We scaled back some, moved to a lower cost of living area, and everything has worked out just fine. I eventually found a job that paid less, but matched much more to 401 and retired at 62. My wife will retire at 55 next year. Story 63. Gary Vaynerchuk, ever heard of him? Worked 14-hour days for a top exec on his team. This went on for about 2 years. I was burnt out from the hustle. Decided to quit without something lined up due to my mental health deteriorating. I ran through my savings within a month. Took a job just to keep myself afloat. 1 year and 1 month later, I was offered a job which pays me $30,000 more and a boss who actually has a high EQ. Mental health is finally back to just keep grinding. That new job is right around the corner, right around. Story 64. Walked out of a job as a pawnbroker. Woman came in with her kid and his Xbox One X. The kid is maybe about 8 or 9 and crying loudly. Please don't sell my Xbox, Mom. I love you, etc. She wanted to pawn her kid's Xbox so she can go and put a down payment on a new iPhone, and I refused, got my coat, told my manager to duck off and left. I'm not going to play a part in that kid's life getting ducked up more so you can have a new phone. Story 65. Yes, it was my first job out of college, and my manager was such a micromanaging idiot. She was trying to fire me for months through a PIP, so every waking day was spent under the impression I wasn't good enough and would never make it. Quit that job to save my mental health. Took the summer off, luckily had plenty of savings, and got a new job in a new industry 4 months later through a friend's referral. Got promoted once, soon to be twice now in less than 2 years. It gets better. Redditors who one day just said, duck it and quit their job to travel the world, how did it all work out? Story 1. I did what you were talking about at 21. I had a low-paying but enjoyable job, but was feeling a little unfulfilled. I'd been working hard for very little money since I was 16 and had little to show for it. I went online and paid for a New Zealand working holiday visa. It was granted, and I had up to a year to save up enough money to make the trip viable. Went to NZ about 7 months later, worked my way around, got drunk a bit, made friends, saw things, met a girl. She followed me back to the UK, and we decided to put all our energy into her skill, which is writing. 6 years later, we have a successful writing, travel business, and have traveled over 50 countries. I'm lucky, but I was also a little brave and worked hard. I'd rather have failed trying to do something I wanted to do than had success at something that did not fulfill me. Story 2. I didn't quit my job. I just took 3 months off and drove from Key West to Protobayek on the Arctic Ocean and back one summer. I saw 2 friends along the way for a night, but otherwise was alone for the summer. mostly camping or sleeping in my car. It was the best summer of my life and gave me the reset I was looking for to go back to all the things I was doing in my life. It's been 6.5 years since I did it, and everything on my life has been better. I'm dealing with more stressful things now and handling it much better. If you like to drive, I highly recommend making the trip. Out west, you can go for days only talking to people at gas stations. You can do 133 on the Bonneville Salt Flats and pay $750 to get towed off of them when you hit a wet spot. You can see the Milky Way next to white sands. You can put your feet in the Arctic Ocean, stand down an Arctic wolf, watch the reaction on the mechanic's face in Seattle when you get an oil change twice in 2 weeks, and watch as he realizes that it's not even his sticker on your windshield the second time. You can change 2 flats at once. Have a kitchen crew give you a standing ovation when they hear you drove from Florida to have their salmon. You can see the things you wanted to, but never had the chance, and the things you never knew you wanted to. Because when you see something, you can just go. You can camp at 12,000 feet by a lake, spend a day on top of a 14,000 mountain. You can play in the snow in April and in the sun at midnight. Take 3 months off, get in the car, and drive. Story 3. I had a good job and was just bored. The wife and I were just doing the same crap over and over in town. Movies, dining out, going to the lake, bonfires. It was a good life, just boring after a while. I decided I wanted to get out and go see Europe. We started saving money, and 2 years later we went. It was amazing. I had 18 days off work and felt like I was living my dream. We went back home, and 10 months later, I wanted to move to Europe. So here I am typing at work from Europe, and we've been here 3 years so far. Best experience of my life. Follow your dreams. Story 4. Let me start by saying I up and quit my job to move across the country, not just to travel. My wife and I got really drunk one night, and I told her, I'm done with this crap, I'm walking home. She asked why I was walking home without any shoes on, and I told her Colorado isn't that far. I don't need shoes. We lived in Illinois at the time. She told me I can't walk to Colorado, but if I really felt that strongly, that I needed to live there, then we will quit our jobs in the morning and move. Well, the morning after rolls around, and I asked her what time she worked today. She gave me the oddest look. She said, I don't work anymore, I thought we were moving. We both called our jobs and quit and started packing. With all of our worldly possessions packed into our 2 Jeeps and a shoddy trailer, we headed west before dawn. Less than 5 miles into the trip, the trailer started swaying ferociously and nearly flipped the Jeep. We pulled over and redistributed the weight in the trailer and kept going. I couldn't go more than 50 miles per hour or the trailer would get squirrely. About 150 miles into the trip, haven't even made it out of Illinois yet, the trailer starts acting really weird, so we pull over. Turns out the wheel bearing is shot. While my wife sleeps in the car, I spend the next 9 or 10 hours hunting down a new wheel bearing. I finally got the bearing replaced, and we head out again. In the middle of Nebraska, the trailer starts acting weird again, so we pull over at the nearest town, Ogallala. 3 of the 4 lug nuts are snapped off, and the last one is worn to about half its original size. It's about 9 p.m. now, and I haven't slept in about 40 hours, so we got a hotel for the night. In the morning, we try to rent a trailer and junk ours, but it's now Sunday and nothing is open. We found a small mechanic shop that we saw a couple uphaul trailers at, and somehow they're open. The guy we talked to said he recognized us from last night, and if he knew what was up, he could have got us going again last night. We asked to rent a trailer, and if there was a junkyard to scrap my old trailer at. He ended up trading us a rental trailer for our busted trailer, and we were once again on our way. About 200 miles of Nebraska left, we are almost there. My wife calls me and tells me her Jeep is going to explode, so I drive her Jeep a little, and after about a minute, it goes pop and lurches forward. I spent the rest of the day working on the Jeep to figure out what it could be, but to no avail. So I told her, just drive slow, and we will make it. About 15 miles away from our destination, and her Jeep is a ticking time bomb with a terrifying pop every few minutes. The next morning, the Jeep wouldn't move ever again. The transmission was destroyed. We found a bar on the side of the road that was a bed and breakfast. We made it. This will be our new home for now. We stayed at the bar a while and ended up meeting the owner, landlord. This is great. We will ask him for a place. He refuses to rent to us because we have a pit bull, but said we can sleep in the parking lot for a few days. While we figure it out, it's late fall and gets cold as hill at night. We lived out of our Jeep with our dog for a month because no one would rent to a pit bull owner. I found a job after a few days and started saving up some money after spending most of our savings on repairs and hotels. After nearly a month in the Jeep, the landlord talks to us and says, your dog seems pretty nice, and you clean up after him every time he goes potty, you can have a room. We finally started getting our crap together, and things were looking up. That was until December 26th when we went for a ride to another bar with our friend's dad. On the way home, he took a 30 miles per hour turn in the mountains, going 70. We were all ejected from the truck. His son passed instantly. My wife broke her neck and I broke my back. Lying on the side of the road at 12:15 a.m. December 27th, I called 911. Everything goes hazy. The ambulance shows up. The helicopter shows up. We were taken to the nearest hospital. I won't go into much detail, but my wife and I are okay now. We had to move back to Illinois because we needed 24 hours a day care. Story 5. 2 years ago, I quit my upper-level tech job and moved to Montana to work at my girlfriend's family-owned lakefront restaurant in the mountains, which is only open half the year. I've worked there learning the restaurant business, doing marketing, bartending, and waiting tables. I've done some freelance web and graphic design jobs and took online classes to add programming to my skill set. I also joined a couple bands as a bass player, which actually pays pretty well in Montana. On our days off, we visited Glacier National Park, Yellowstone, and countless little gems of nature in between. The past 2 winters, while the restaurant is closed for 6 months, we have traveled extensively. The first winter, we went from north to south through South America, starting in Cartagena, Colombia, and ending in Ushuaia, Argentina. Colombia stole our hearts with the jungle beaches of Parque Tayrona, the picture-perfect colonial village of Villa de Leyva, fascinating ancient statues and tombs in San Agustin, and the colorful old walled city of Cartagena. We boated up the Amazon and into Peru, where we hiked in and out of Colca Canyon, the world's second deepest, and up into the thin air of the world's second highest mountain range, Cordillera Blanca. We explored the ancient ruins of the mud city of Chan Chan, Incan funerary towers overlooking Lake Titicaca, and Cusco and the sacred valley leading to the highlight of Machu Picchu. In Chile, we saw the otherworldly high-altitude desert landscapes and pink flamingos in Atacama, got lost in the graffiti-covered maze of Valparaiso, camped and hiked through the Andes, swam in a sparkling lake while watching the smoke rise from a volcano in Pucón, and explored a dusty, windswept island that is only home to an old lighthouse and thousands of penguins. From there, we traveled into Argentina. We watched the sunrise on Fitzroy, went wine tasting and horseback riding in Mendoza, looked at Rembrandt and Monet masterpieces in Buenos Aires, watched the massive Perito Moreno glacier thunderously calving into a lake, and saw humpback whales surface at the end of the world in Ushuaia on Tierra del Fuego. We crossed back into Chile and hiked and camped our way through the majestic Torres del Paine National Park. This off-season, we started out with a month-long road trip through the western U.S. We camped and hiked in 10 national parks, visited friends in Denver and San Francisco, and squeezed in a weekend in Vegas. In December, we flew to Southeast Asia. We started in Saigon, Vietnam, and traveled north through crazy cities, rowdy beach towns, and isolated villages. We hiked and boated through some of the biggest caves in the world, visited the ancient port town of Hoi An, wandered through the ruins of a giant palace in Hue, spent Christmas in Sapa, the city in the clouds, rode a scooter across Katba Island, and kayaked through the limestone karst islands of Hai Long Bay. We ate pho, bun cha, ban mai, and as many other foods as we could try, and loved it all. From there, we flew to northern Thailand. We saw breathtaking temples, rode a moped through lush mountains to natural hot springs, and spent a day at an elephant rescue sanctuary where we fed, played, bathed, and hiked with a herd of elephants, possibly the highlight of all of our travels. We flew south and island-hopped our way through tropical paradise after paradise, eating fantastic and amazingly cheap Thai food throughout the country. We visited the Royal Palace, and my girlfriend got an elephant tattoo in Bangkok. From there, we flew to Siem Reap, Cambodia, and spent a few days in the magical ruins of Angkor Wat, another major travel highlight. We fell in love with Cambodia, enjoying the great food and friendly people as we worked our way through Battambang, Phnom Penh, and down to the survivor island of Koh Rong. We looped back into southern Vietnam to spend a couple days in the Mekong Delta before flying back out of Saigon. We had a 20-hour layover in Seoul, South Korea, allowing us to see the city's highlights and try some legendary Korean BBQ. We've spent the last few weeks down in Central America, staying at a friend's villa in a tiny coastal town in Nicaragua, appreciating the colonial Spanish architecture of Granada, and busing our way through Costa Rica to swim in the warm Caribbean, and then the comparatively freezing Pacific. As I write this, we're on a bus to the airport to fly home, visit family, and get back to work in Montana in a few weeks. These past couple of years have been unforgettable, some of the best times of my life. I've learned so much and grown as a person in ways that I probably can't fully understand until I look back on it a few years from now. I've shared lifelong memories with my girlfriend and fallen even more in love with her, with every new mountain, ocean, temple, cathedral, and bus ride in between. And I've eaten some really, really good food. I can't even think about it without my mouth watering. So I'd say it worked out pretty well for me. Story 6. I did this a few times over the years. First time I was 21 and a year away from finishing college, where I was working, paid interning plus co-op study at my uni at a finance firm. Crash of '08 happened. I was working shadowing middle office level mutual funds for a big Boston bank, was so hungry to leave school and start my career. Left that job after the crash, just as my college degree was completed, I ended up taking a gig in Midtown NYC doing front office bank-to-bank lending and did that for a year, my first real job, commuting from North NJ every day to save money. Lost my mind and couldn't survive after 9 months. I grabbed a backpack, my motorcycle endorsement on my license, and set out for Kilimanjaro with 2 friends who were us wildlands forest firefighters. They had just finished a season on a Helitech crew, dropping into the Tetons in Wyoming. And I'd never been anywhere other than the east coast of the US, some Europe, a few islands, all low altitude. I was also coming off a desk job where I had no time to get in shape. Also, I've had asthma my entire life. Ended up in Moche, Tanzania, acclimated a few days, and began the climb. Intense, fun, breathtaking. That's all I can say. I made it to the top, Uhuru Peak, and back down no issues other than slight oxygen fatigue and headaches on the last stretch. My mind was in another place when we made it to the glacier. And after when we took our group photo, I remember crying tears of joy. I don't think I have cried since. That was in 2011. Now, after doing something like this, being out of your comfort zone, defying your own beliefs of what you as a person carving out your place in the world can do, can fit in. You begin to see there's more to life than what you thought. That's an amazing place to be, and that is worth chasing. And so it began. I grabbed a motorbike and traveled. I headed to the Middle East. I headed to Jordan to see Petra because, since a little kid, I had watched Indiana Jones, The Last Crusade, and wanted to see that bank from the Byzantine era, so I saw it. And I met some cool people along the way. I rafted the Nile River. I tried to ride a 125cc motorcycle through the Serengeti, and didn't make it. I survived and stayed in an art colony in Jinja, Uganda, and I met cool Europeans, cool Brits, cool Aussies. I decided I would head back to the US and make my way west because the people I met from outside the US had seen more of my home than I had. So I bought a moto and rode out west. I made it to Los Angeles and ran out of money. So built a life for myself, got into an industry that allowed me to work for months, then travel. I am happy. I want to travel again. I work and research my next adventure, and I do it, mostly solo by myself, and I have fun. Would love to share the experience, and that's probably my only regret. I'm lonely. But I don't think that will last forever. Relationships pass, but experience doesn't. Missed opportunities will come and go. Fun will be had. I quit projects when I'm ready and head out on a new journey. I recently did a loop of Baja California on motorcycles that I bought not running, fixed up, and rode. My buddy from Kilimanjaro came with me. Here we are riding in Bajas or Mexico. It's fun. I don't work in finance anymore, and I don't keep in touch with my old friends from that industry, just because I don't really use Facebook much at all. I love photography, which I find complements my hobbies quite well. Advrator forums is full of people like me. I'm not special in any way. At social gatherings, I usually don't bring it up because it seems like a lie. No one wants to come off a bragger, a been there, done that kind of person. So I don't speak about it unless someone asks. I think people meet me and wonder why I am eager to work on motors, fix things, tinker on gadgets, share a beer, jump off a high ledge into water, pick a mountain in the distance and drive there on the spot. That's fun. I just do it. We need people who think I am weird. We need people afraid of leaving comfort. That keeps them grounded. I understand that. I know I've been in situations where I am close to being in danger, where I need to determine decision, and I make the right ones. I'm not so sure everyone can do the same, and that's completely okay. A desk job will never be me. It's amazing I learned that before my 30. Story 7. Are you planning to do this? I feel like you're wanting someone to tell you do it, which if that's the case, then I'll be that person. Either do it right now, or set a hard date to do it in the near future to get the logistics sorted. But either way, do it. If it's not the case, then ignore this post. Story 8. I did just that in 2014. I packed a backpacking bag filled with camping gear, clothes, snacks, and cash. I was gone for 13 months. Being female, I found myself having to take extra precautions while traveling. I'm fairly independent and introverted, so I didn't mind the isolation, however. There were times when the loneliness set in and it sucked. That loneliness pushed me to reach out to others that I met along my travels. And I've made some lifelong friends as a result. Overall, I'm really happy I did it and have gained a lot of self-confidence from the experience. Tip: if you're going backpacking, invest in some high-quality gear. Story 9. I was young, I was bored at work, and didn't want to go back to university. I saw an ad in the paper saying, come to Germany and be an au pair. I thought it would be a year. I'd learn another language, see a bit more of Europe, and have a chance to think about what to do next. That was 23 years ago, and I still live in Europe. Story 10. I jacked in my job in 2008 and moved to Africa. The main driving force was I was bored of my job. I'd been there for 5 years, which felt like forever in my mid-20s. I had no idea what I wanted to do with my life and figured a jolt would help me focus on where I wanted my life to head. I spent 9 months in a village in Tanzania before I decided to come home. I then returned to my old job and have been doing the same thing ever since. So I guess I didn't come to a decision about what I wanted to do, though it was still a fun break. Story 11. Pretty good. Now live on the other side of the world with wife and 2 kids, doing a job that doesn't exist in any meaningful way in my home country. What you may not realize is that doing exactly this, going traveling for at least 6 months, more often a year or more, is pretty damn common for young adults in almost every Western country in the world, except for the US. Those college debts keep you guys chained to the floor. Story 12 had the most mind-numbing, boring job at the worst call center. One good thing was that money piled up since I had no life due to 3-hour-day commuting. I said, damn this, and decided to overhaul my life, lose weight and travel the world to cure my introverts. It wasn't all bad, but I can tell you that to travel the world alone as an introvert was probably the worst idea ever. Being too shy to make contact with people, staying at my hostel because night outside in strange countries are scary, and so on, doesn't really expand your horizons. Then I went to USA and got stuck in a small backwater town in Wisconsin for a few months, with winter flirt before heading home. Went back to Sweden, flopped about a bit, and then went back to my old job for another few years before finding something better. All in all, it was well worth it. But I think I would have a much better time with a friend for the trip to do things with and who would push me to do stuff. Story 13. As with most of these stories, I didn't just up and leave my job. I was working for a really cool wilderness-based company in a pretty cool position. However, this position kept me out of field work and in the office, in front of a computer, for 35 of the 45 hours I worked each week. I also made crap money. At this point, I was sitting on $20K that my grandma had left me when she passed. I'd done the responsible thing and invested this money. I was growing it with the idea that I would eventually use it as part of a down payment on a house. I grew weary of work, my lower back beginning to ache, and my already compromised vision becoming worse. I knew I could not settle down and live this life for the foreseeable future, and signing a mortgage would certainly ensure that. After staying late at the office one night, I nearly lost my grasp on reality. A feeling of sadness and panic came over me. On top of that, it was raining and cold out, and I had a 20-minute bike ride to get me home. I bundled up, went outside to huddle under the building's awning, and called Mom. We talked for an hour about my sadness and my longing to escape the reality I'd created for myself. She suggested a trip, maybe travel Europe or South America or go on a hike. She was familiar with the Appalachian Trail and its powers of transformation. I latched onto that idea, and 2 days later began my plans to hike a similar trail, the Pacific Crest Trail. 5 months of planning, preparing, and training later, I set out on the Pacific Crest Trail. I hiked its entire length, from Mexico to Canada, and began to learn what this kind of freewheeling lifestyle could bring me. I was as happy and clear-headed as I've ever been. And now I know I'll never go back to a life of passionless grinding in front of a computer. I've still got a good chunk of that money, thanks Grandma, and I'm setting myself up for another adventure. Since I've been back from the PCT, I've worked 6 days a week at a local restaurant and have lived on a friend's floor in order to maximize my savings. In 2 months, I will again attempt to hike from Mexico to Canada, this time along the much more rugged and dangerous Continental Divide Trail. I'm loving life to the best of my ability, and it's paying off big time. Story 14. Hey mate, I was living in Sydney with good jobs in the hospitality industry. A large group of friends and was having a blast, partying and enjoying being a newly single dude working in an industry where meeting new fun peepkey every day is the norm. I had always blissfully imagined traveling around the world, seeing I am a dual citizen with Alice in Ireland. One day, I was talking with a friend who had moved to the UK as I was sitting in my car prior to going into work, and I just decided, damn it, I'm going to finally pull the trigger and go to Europe. Later that week, I went to the local travel agent in my town, before internet ticket sales were a real option, and paid for a one-way ticket to Vienna, Austria. I had tow friends headed back to Slovenia, and I was going to tag along with them and then head on to the UK to find work. The ticket was for July, and this was February. My 2 friends who I was going to be traveling with needed to move their trip forward, and I was not able to. So I ended up flying alone, with no set plans, aside from a rental car in Vienna. My friend from Slovenia told me that their family still wanted me to come visit them, so I decided I would head that way still. So alone, on a passing rain morning in Vienna, I drove south and headed into the unknown. I spent the next 2 weeks staying with my friend's family in Ljubljana, as they would not let me stay in a hotel, hostel, and went over to Croatia and saw most things Slovenia has to offer. Today, it still stands as my favorite European country to visit. After that, I flew to the UK, stayed with my friends in a house with 15 other Aussies, found a job, eventually moved into a good house with my cousin and a couple. I was running a pub in Hammersmith, right on the river called the Dove, where a Canadian girl started working. We started dating. Then, after 2 years, she wanted to head back to Canada. I got a 1-year work visa, and we headed over to Vancouver. Fast forward 11 years. Here I am, living on Vancouver Island, with the same girl. We just had a baby girl a year ago, and life is sweet. Story 15. I was in a depressing relationship, doing a depressing job, bookkeeping, accounting for a small business, and I decided to drop it all and go traveling on my own. I didn't just one day wake up and decide to leave. The decision came to me gradually, like a slow realization that this had to happen for me if I were to have an opportunity to start again or find a chance to be happy. Over about 6 months, I worked and saved money and tried my best to work out the relationship, which it just didn't. At the end of this, I had a reasonable amount of money and had spent a reasonable amount of time researching, reading some of the less pretentious travel blogs for tips, lurking on forums, etc. I was confident that I was going out there to find myself, to eventually realize that I had either made the best or worst decision of my life. But either way, to realize something and make an experience of it. I ended up living on farms, islands, working in restaurants, picking apples, caring for lambs, working in hostels, teaching English, looking after children, and making wonderful friends everywhere I went. I discovered that I can make friends and that people actually want to spend time with me, which was something I didn't believe before. I became confident in myself, my personality, and my ability to learn new skills. I realized that, to a certain degree, you can always figure things out as you go, without making huge long-term plans, and that making contacts is much better than staying in and writing applications. The best part about my travels is that I met my wife, who was studying in a city where I was teaching English. By a long string of unlikely events, we met each other and immediately fell in love. Within a few months, I dropped my plans and was sitting on a plane to her home country with no idea what I would do when I got there or how. But my travels had given me the experience I needed to pursue what I wanted. We're now traveling and enjoying our lives together, and sometimes we still talk about how easily we could have never met. If you have the opportunity to go somewhere, don't do the tourism thing. Live with real people and try things you've never done before. Not adventure sports, I mean actual jobs and skills. Story 16. I had a crafty job working in a tax office. It was inhumane. My American girlfriend at the time was about to finish her summer program in England. After her studies, she had planned to backpack around Europe with her friend. We were both naive. We can Skype about our prospects, but we both feared it wouldn't work, that the distance would kill it. As a final huzzah, I decided to plan a long weekend away in one of her stops. So I booked a Friday off of work and I flew out on a Thursday evening to Berlin to spend a final weekend with her. Me, my girl, and her friend then spent an awesome 3 days in Berlin, drinking, and drinking. We had some German friends there also, equally charming and charismatic. Monday came and my flight was scheduled in the afternoon. I packed up my things and proceeded to walk to the lobby of the hostel. We were all gathered there, chit-chatting. Internally, I was dying. I thought to myself, here's this girl who likes you, who actually likes you, and you're about to fly home to some godforsaken town to go back to some godforsaken job that you hate. Then, completely out of left field and totally against my usual character, I asked myself this question: do you really have to go back? I pondered this for a few minutes before I broached it with the group. They were all receptive to the idea, thrilled as a matter of fact. But it was one girl in particular, our mutual German friend, who really solidified the idea in my mind. She turned to me and, quite matter-of-factly, as some Germans have the glorious habit of doing, said, "Would you rather go home to your crafty job or stay and spend time with your girl?" Well, you can pretty guess my decision. I ended up quitting my crafty job so that I could backpack across Europe for 6 weeks. Years later, I married that girl and emigrated to the US to start a new life here with her. Life is good. Story 17. I didn't quit my job in 2003. I took leave to travel because it all seemed too much a routine to a dead end. Literally. I left a dead-end job in South Africa for Southeast Asia in 2003, stopped off in New Zealand for 12 years, and now live and work in Germany. I never went to college or university, and I was not born into money, and I did okay. You'll be fine too. My twins are now 7 years old and made the last leap with me. I'll be in Germany until they finish school before I go off again, I'm sure. No rocking chairs and TV for me, thanks. I have every intention of dying somewhere remote or foreign. I'm not queuing up for meds at Happy Palms. If you think this is too much, here is some advice from me. Stop investing in stuff. It does nothing for you but weigh you down. Live simple and save. People don't care if you have a $5,000 couch or a new Porsche. It's all material garbage, and it really impresses nobody who is honest with you. All that money you could save or invest will contribute to amazing experiences, new places, new friends, all good or bad, but all different as you choose. When I arrived, decided to live in New Zealand. I had to fly back to South Africa to officially quit my job and sell my stuff. On the plane, I met this girl and she said, "Make the decision to move before you sit at your desk at work." She was right. I know now that if I got back to work on Monday to start my notice period and pen my resignation letter, I would have thought about how great my holiday was and how lucky I am to have a stable job. I bought my one-way ticket to NZ before I went to work that Monday, and it was the best decision ever. In each of the places I have been lucky enough to live, I have made many long and short road trips, mostly by motorcycle, which have led to great conversations and friendships over time. Good luck. Story 18. I worked in China right out of college, briefly as an English teacher in a small city, then at an ad agency in Shanghai. I got to travel around Asia a bit for visa reasons while working, but never had the time to do anything more interesting than a quick weekend trip. Once I quit my job, I realized I didn't want to regret missing Asia. I initially planned a 2-3-week trip around Thailand, then a quick jaunt to Siem Reap in Cambodia. I ended up spending a month in Thailand learning Thai massage, scuba, and basic Thai language and cooking. Went to Cambodia for Siem Reap and met a guy in my hostel on Nai. We got along and went onward to a few other places in Cambodia. We decided to go to India and made a loop around the subcontinent over a month. I got to hike through the Khasi Hills and crawl across cliffs on living bridges made of tree roots. I was really happy to see the rest of India with the guy I met in Siem Reap, as it's not the most female-friendly place. Then we headed to Sri Lanka for surfing and relaxation. My 3-week trip turned into 3 months of backpacking. I went back to Shanghai, packed up my stuff, and got my dog ready to go to the United States. I got there, saw family around the country, and kept messaging the guy from Siem Reap. He said he was going to be in Florida soon, and I was there to hang out with my dad. We met up and decided to go to Costa Rica. Once we started, we just kept going. Panama, Colombia, Galapagos, mainland Ecuador. Another 2 or 3 months. It was great. I saw so many places, and I learned a lot along the way. It was definitely rough at times. Simple living arrangements, longing winding train, bus rides, and never having the time to get comfortable in any one place. Next time, I'll take more time in each spot. Now I'm living with the guy I met in Siem Reap in his house in Toronto, semi-broke, and trying to figure out what to do next professionally. It's a lot of stress, and I sometimes wonder if I should have gone into a traditional career path like medicine. But for now, I'm keeping my eyes open for more flexible opportunities that will allow me to work abroad in the future. Story 19. Did this in 2009 at the age of 27. Quit my job as a senior programmer at a major US bank to visit Australia for a month. Immediately met a girl that liked adventure, so we decided to live and travel together. We dated for 5 years and lived in 15 countries. Half were Asian countries because they're cheap and close to us. The constant travel and separation from our friends and family took a toll, and eventually we both wanted something different. That was almost 3 years ago. Still love travel. Total number of countries I've visited currently stands at 26. Story 20. As a teenager, I always wanted to go traveling someday. I went through school, college, and uni, graduated on schedule when I was 21 alongside my husband. I'd been planning to save up and go traveling after university. But somehow I ended up falling into a really good admin job with decent salary, level of responsibility, and job security immediately after graduation. My husband also got a job as a head chef. I never counted on this, and I could have easily fallen into the routine of full-time work and home life. But my dad always said that his biggest regret was not traveling. I got a small inheritance from my grandparents. And then my husband and I saved rigorously for 6 months. We quit our jobs, ended our tenancy on our flat, sold everything we owned, and went traveling around the world for 6 months. We came home in October 2016, and we always expected to have to start from scratch again. After 2 or 3 months of unemployment and living with my sister for free, I saw an advertisement for the same job I was doing before, but in a different department. I got the job, and my husband is now a temp in my office with good prospects of a permanent job in the near future. We are renting a house and settling back into regular life. We risked everything to go travel. But even if we were still unemployed and living with family, it would all have been worth it. Those 6 months of travel were the best of my life. The experiences we had, the friends we made, the confidence we gained, the places we saw, the memories we made. I would never change it for anything. Once my husband is working full-time again, we're going to start saving for more travel, but on shorter terms so that we can keep our jobs. A 4-week trip each year, probably. Story 21. I quit my job at just shy of 40, rented out my house as I knew I wanted to come back to it, put everything in storage and moved to Germany for 2+ years. All in all, I had almost 4 years of midlife retirement. I hiked a 500-mile trail for a summer. Now I'm back at what I think is a better job. I got healthy with a bunch of exercise. I spent so much time with my young kids. I got to see how successful a more socialist society can be. It was very worth it to me. Scary and risky at times, but I got lucky and it worked out. Story 22. I had this job at a call center about a year ago. Shortly before I got this job, my mom passed away, so I was going through a very rough time in my life. I showed up to work every day for months, despite every morning being a battle to get out of bed and face the world. To top it all off, my job was to be a punching bag for angry customers. Well, one day I decided that I needed a day off. I explained the situation and was very upfront about my mom passing and just needing a day to collect myself. I told them this over a full day in advance, over the phone, and I used a sick day that I accumulated over time. They asked, "Are you sure you can't come in?" And I said, Yes, I apologize, but I really need this day to recoup and ensure that I'm performing the best I can at work. And they said, okay. The day I return to work, I get called into the office and get formally written up for my first absence, since I've started working there 5 months prior. The manager of the call center says, you really need to go to therapy to get over what happened to your mother. This is a call center environment, and we need our employees present when they are scheduled. I was so mad, I wanted to vault over his desk and punch him in his dumb damn face, and I wanted to cry at the same time. I kept my mouth shut, walked out of his office, and went on my lunch. I contemplated never returning, but I ended up finishing my shift. That night, I got a call from another potential employer asking for an interview. I scheduled the interview and thought to myself, man, I can't last one more day at that call center. I laid in bed awake until 2 a.m. when I finally said damn it, and I drove to the call center, dropped off all my stuff, and texted the manager saying, I quit! My stuff is on my desk. I never felt so good leaving a place behind like that. Story 23. Oh, pick me. I graduated college and got a real job for 18 months and then said, damn it, and went to travel the world. It was a blast. I loved it. I went all the way around the world and ended up in Australia. A company gave me a long stay visa and I would have been making good money. But for a lot of reasons, I wanted to come back. I had a couple friends working at a small company, and I got a nice raise from when I left. It's been very easy getting back into my old life. I have a nice apartment and everything is stable again. This trip cost me $30,000, but $7,000 was getting my life back together in Denver. The biggest takeaway I had from my trip around the world is that it's easy to think the next place or trip will make you happy, but it won't. You have to be happy with yourself. There is no car or bag or destination that can do that. It's an interesting thing to realize. Lots of people travel for lots of different reasons, and by default, it has an element of escapism in it. But traveling won't solve your problems, and often looking for the answer won't help if you don't know the question. I still travel a lot. I was in Italy and Amsterdam in November, Mexico in January, Aspen next weekend, then NYC in April. But I do it differently. I will definitely take another round-the-world trip, probably at 30. Only one job interviewer had any sort of issue with my trip, and that guy was an idiot. Story 24. I graduated in 2012 at the tail end of the recession, UK, and immediately left for New Zealand. It didn't work out. I made all the classic mistakes. Returning home, the job market was absolutely horrific, and all I could get was 14 hours a week at the university I graduated from. I then got an interview at a very large media agency, and then a second interview. I finally thought, this is it, only to fall at the last hurdle. I had enough money for a plane ticket and a bit to live on. I said, damn it. Threw some clothes in a bag and moved to Toronto. Immediately got a well-paid government job and met my Australian girlfriend. Not long after getting there, I learned French, went to Paris, went to San Francisco, Burning Man, Montreal, Paris again, Montreal again, Hawaii, New Caledonia, and I now live in Sydney with the Australian girl I've told you about. We've been together over 3 years now. Tomorrow, I have an interview at the Department of Education. 14 hours a week, single, with limited possibilities and barely enough spare cash to scratch 2 pennies together to today. I'd say it went damn spectacularly. Story 25. Currently doing this, been in Vietnam 3 months and head to Laos tomorrow. Quit my job a few years ago in the UK in a crap call center and went traveling, but had a closed mind about it. Traveled for 9 months, then came home and regretted it after a week, but figured I'd got the traveling out of my system and now I can focus on finding a career. This was back in 2014. Fast forward to June 2016, and I'm looking at flights around the world from my hometown in Manchester. Saw a cheap flight to Vietnam and instantly thought, damn Jate, and booked it. I had around 6 months to sell as much of my crap as I could and save as much as I could, and then head off traveling. My job at the time was pretty dull, was in another call center, but was making footsteps into working my way up in the business. Only thing I didn't manage to sell was my car, which is sat on my parents' driveway back home. Every time I feel homesick, I remember the regret of coming home too early. This time round, I want to travel as long as I can. I have a decent amount of funds before I need to work. Been in Vietnam 3 months and head to Laos tomorrow, as I said, then Cambodia and Thailand. Then I'm planning on coming back to Vietnam to find some work. And then eventually on to New Zealand to work over there too. The first time I traveled with a friend, this time I'm doing it solo, and it's the best decision I've ever made. Story 26. I did this, but under very unfortunate circumstances. My dad passed. It crushed me and crippled my whole world. My dad was my foundation and one of my best friends, so I left and went traveling. I was dating a girl who was a former hitchhiker, and she had the itch to get out again, so I figured, damn it, why not? It was the most amazing 5 months of my life. I'm currently working 3 jobs so I can save up money to afford to do it again. Maybe permanently. The world is huge. Everywhere you go is a damn adventure, even if it's just a super Walmart in Texas or the largest publicly accessible cave in the US. I want to go someplace coastal next. Maybe Italy, maybe Palau. No idea. But it's happening in about a year or two. If I don't get anybody pregnant or land myself in jail in that time. Seriously though, if you're reading this and even slightly considering doing it, do it. Do it now. Write the duck now. You may never have the freedom of choice again. You have in this moment, so do it. All the rules and expectations can go straight to hell. The I'll go excuses are a bunch of crap. I left with $1,200 and 3 credit card bills to pay. I made it work, got jobs and crap, lived in my car or in campgrounds. Just go PS. There's a million blogs out there trying to tell you what you need to make a trip like this work. They're lying to you. They want to sell you stuff. All you need is what a hobo has. Those people travel perpetually, for free. So, a bag of some kind, some clothes, something to sleep in, and shoes. Everything else is a luxury, not a necessity. Story 27. When I was 26, I finally had enough of my job, and spur of the moment handed in my resignation. With no idea what I was going to do next, I decided to just go traveling. Came up with this idea of going all the way to Istanbul by train, I live in the UK, and set off by myself. When I first set off, I was terrified and thinking, just try it, and if you don't like it, you can turn back. And I found out that actually I love travel more than anything. Came home a few months later because I'd run out of money, hadn't had much saved up to start with because I'd never planned on going traveling. Immediately got a job, maternity cover at my old company, and started seriously saving for the next trip. Moved in with my parents to save money and did nothing but work and go home to save as much money as possible. After 12 months, the woman I was covering for came back off maternity leave, and I set off for 7 months traveling around Asia. Came back in December, just finished my TEFL course, and planning to go back to Asia as soon as possible to teach English. So from being stuck in a dead-end job, suffering from crippling shyness and no confidence, I've gone to traveling around the world by myself. I've always wanted to be a teacher, but never thought I could. But whenever I lose confidence now, I just think, come on, you've been to insert country here by yourself, and you can't talk to a few kids? And it's given me ambition, not just to travel, but to see if I can get into teaching as a career. But all those people who said, oh, go for a few weeks traveling around Europe and you'll get this travel thing out of your system. Yeah, that didn't work out so well. Story 28. I've done a few of these. I didn't have a job when I graduated from college, and there were a lot of rivers that I wanted to fish. I spent about 4 months living in a tent, kicking around the Rockies in my decrepit Jeep, living the untethered fly fisherman's dream. I came back home and picked up temporary work that turned into semi-permanent work. But 18 months later, they closed the office and tossed us all out. I was delighted. It was summer, and I'd been itching to hit the road again. I spent another 3 months in vagabond trout bum mode before coming back and picking up another temp job. That one eventually turned into something like a career, and I met my wife along the way. We'd slipped into project-based independent consulting, which allowed a great deal of flexibility. We wrapped up our contracts, avoided new ones, and kicked off on a 9-month pre-breeding honeymoon across Europe, Asia, and the western half of North America. All of those trips changed my life in positive ways, including a few particular beliefs that were shaped or shattered. They affected my priorities in ways that seemed to be different from many of my peers. And they eradicated many of the irrational fears about the big, bad world that seemed to flourish among folks who haven't strayed far from home. I picked up a few entirely rational fears as well. None of those trips, or gaps, have damaged my employability in any significant. Exactly the opposite. They've increased my suitability for jobs that I'd really like to have. I regret only that we didn't stay out longer and go to even more places before we had kids. And now that we're saddled with a couple of kids, I can't wait to take them out on the road too. Story 29. Not me, but a relatively close friend of mine. She was involved in a pretty bad car accident and had a life-changing epiphany. She realized that life is too short and she should just quit her Fortune 100 accounting job and travel the world. So she did. She left a very high-paying job with zero notice and flew to Europe and spent just over a year there. Says it was the best time of her life. However, when she came back, she had a dose of reality. She ghosted pretty much everyone she knew, so she had trouble finding places to live. She also spent over 6 months looking for a job because no accounting firm would hire her, since she either had a huge time gap on her resume or would have to explain why she just left her high-paying job. She ended up settling for some mid-$40,000 a year job, which was a huge pay cut compared to her original job of around $100,000. Says sometimes she regrets it because she feels her career has been ducked, but also says she wouldn't trade the experience she had for anything. Just depends on the days and when bills are due. Story 30. I just announced to my employer this last week that I'll be quitting this summer. My wife and I are getting rid of most of our stuff, selling our house, and we'll be traveling for a year across the US and Canada with our 2 kids in a vintage travel trailer we've refurbished. Story 31. I traveled the world for 6 months after undergrad, so didn't go last minute. But it was inspired by the fact that I was finishing my degree mid-year And I had a dream where I then threw my grad school applications in the mail and traveled the world for 6 months. Woke up incredibly jealous of my dream self and then realized there was no reason not to do it. Basically, I'd saved enough money throughout undergrad to buy a car, which was more than enough if I stuck to cheaper countries. Still don't have a car, Betty W., but don't regret that decision for a moment. Frankly, it was an incredible experience I will always treasure. And the hardest part was dealing with my parents nervous for their daughter traveling through Laos and South Africa and such places on her own. Of course, in solo travel, you are very rarely alone. You meet tons of people. Did sprain my ankle in Laos in a ziplining accident, so wasn't walking well for about a week. But small price to pay in 6 months of adventures. I now live abroad, and my boyfriend and I are now saving money in hopes of doing a big trip together next year. There's so much world to see, we likely won't hit up many of the destinations I've been to.